We're tracking the fallout from Chief Justice John Roberts' very rare statement rebuking President Trump's calls to impeach a federal judge who blocked his deportation flights. Joining us now right here in the Situation Room, the retired U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. He's the author of the brand new book entitled Reading the Constitution, Why I Chose Pragmatism, Not Textualism. Here it is, right here, an excellent new book. Justice Breyer, thanks so much for joining us. We have good timing to discuss what's going on right now. I know you told our Supreme Court analyst Joan Biskupic that this very rare statement from the Chief Justice John Roberts was appropriate because it was short, in your words, short, informative, and didn't blame anyone. Why was this the right moment for Chief Justice Roberts to speak out?
People were talking about the case, and they have been in your profession, in the District of Columbia Court, Judge Boasberg and so forth. And look at this statement. 2 sentences. For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision.
This is Chief Justice Roberts.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this is his press release. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. And now, 299 million of our, or more than that, 229 million of our 230 million people, how many do we have?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that, are not lawyers. They're not judges. They don't know. And this is an informative and educational statement. Look,
so you think it was appropriate?
I do, because they don't know. I mean, when you have a district court judge or you have a court of appeals judge, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. What do you think the losing side thinks of the judge or the judge's decision? Naturally, they think it's wrong. Of course, that happens every day of the week, across the entire country. And judges are wrong sometimes. So what does that person do? He appeals. He asks for a special writ in some cases, but he gets others to review the decision. Since 1805, and indeed before, it was always considered in this country. It was Chase who was, they tried to impeach in 1805.
You don't like a judge's decision, you go ahead and appeal it to a higher court.
Correct.
And you move on the legal process.
Correct.
As opposed to simply saying, we're going to impeach him.
You move on in the legal process, and that just informs this 2-sentence statement that tells our 330 million people, it tells them how the complicated.
So what does this say about President Trump that he's calling for the impeachment of a federal judge?
Well, the statement doesn't mention the president.
But we know who the statement was referring to. The timing is clearly obvious.
No, you can ask the the person who made the statement, but he's trying to explain to the people of this country how the legal system works and how it doesn't work. It doesn't work by impeaching a judge because you don't like his decision.
Yeah.
And by the way, you may be right. The other side may be wrong.
Right.
There are 2 sides usually.
Take it to an appeal.
Correct.
And move on legally in the process.
Correct.
The public, as you know, has lost a lot of confidence in the U.S. Supreme Court in recent years. Does this court have enough credibility right now with the American people to push back against the president when necessary?
You don't want a judge to be looking over his shoulder to public opinion. Suppose that the case involved a criminal case involving a very unpopular person. The judge must be fair. But, now, who put this correctly, the but? Professor Freund from my law school. He said, no judge decides a case by looking to the temperature of the day. But every judge is aware of the climate of the era. Now, what does that mean? Perfect. You don't know exactly. No, politics is out. Whoa. You find a couple of cases where the fact that this is the Supreme Court of the United States and we're part of the governing institution, where you have to be aware of what's going on in the country, and that might include a political basis. You see, it's like this. You ever read P.G. Wodehouse?
Go ahead.
All right. His character gets up. He says, Bertie got up in the morning. He wasn't disgruntled, but he wasn't exactly gruntled either. You're a judge, you decide what you think is correct in the law, period. But are you aware of what's going on in the country? Yes, you are.
As you know, many Americans think the U.S. Supreme Court is simply too political right now. Democrats are upset about some decisions. Republicans are upset about some decisions. Are the justices on the Supreme Court ever political from your perspective?
The example that I use, I was there 28 years, and I thought it's very political to get appointed by groups who are political groups. The political groups tell the president who they want, but they want someone who will decide on the law, and they think his views of the law are such that it will lean in our direction. The judge is certain he's deciding according to the law. We didn't discuss politics really in a case. No, it's not discussed. That's not part of it. But, of course, some people who are not the judges and see the result, like this result, or don't. And of course you get statements from them, and of course they see the opinion one way or the other. But that isn't how the judges see it. You wanted an example?
Go ahead.
Felix Frankfurter, at the time when the court had a very hard time trying to get enforced Brown versus Board of Education, the case that said you cannot segregate, that's unconstitutional. We need integration racially. All right? All right, a case comes up to the court, and it involves miscegenation. Black man, white man, black woman marrying. And the court has to decide, is that constitutional? They're going to say that statute that forbids miscegenation isn't. No, it's not. But Frankfurter says to the court in conference, colleagues, if we decide this now, we will never get Brown versus Board enforced because the South, which by the way is having all these signs saying impeach Earl Warren, okay? The South will never do it and no one's helping us. So they did not take the case, as they have the right not to. A few years later they did. They took the case and they decided it was unconstitutional. But taking it at that moment, it would have interfered with the effort of the court to get Brown versus Board of Education
Which is so
enforced.
historic and so significant indeed, and so overwhelming at the time.
Yes.
That it was really critically important.
That's right, and that's why you never can say never about anything. I mean, the judges are trying to be judges. They have different views. In this book, I explain why I think looking to purposes and values and looking to results is important as part of the legal process. Other people think, no, you just read the text. All right?
We've heard from some of President Trump's closest allies, Justice Breyer, including some within his own administration, including the White House, who say they don't care what the courts think and that the president can simply ignore them. How dangerous is that?
Well, there was a president who did say something like that in around the 1830s, I think, when the court decided that northern Georgia, under our treaties, belonged to the Cherokee Indians. And supposedly he said something like, perhaps not these exact words, but John Marshall, the Chief Justice, made his decision. Now let him enforce it. Okay? And Joseph Story, a great Supreme Court judge, wrote to Marshall, and he said, oh dear, I despair. This document, the Constitution of the United States, it's gone. Well, after a while, I think it was South Carolina, but I'm not sure, said this is a great idea. Let's not enforce the Constitution or the federal law, and we will not send to Washington the money that we owe them for customs duties. Well, Jackson began to think, maybe I should think twice about this. That was a bad day for law and for the rule of law in the United States. And then we come to where we are now.
Are we nearing a constitutional crisis right now?
No one really knows. No one really knows. People have different views on that. And the best thing, I think, for the judges is you follow the law. You simply follow the law. And that is what they try to do.
But what if the President of the United States doesn't want to follow the law, the Constitution, the way it's written, and has other ideas?
I hate to tell you how I've been trained. I've been trained not to consider difficult hypotheticals. and you consider a case when it's in front of you. And as long as people are appealing, as long as people use the legal process as it is intended to be used in this document, It says right here, judges shall hold their offices during good behavior as long as they follow the traditions of 200 and more years. We won't have that hypothetical.